everyone, so I am here with my October wrap up. It's very belated, but November's been a really hectic month for me. And there are just so many books here to talk about that I was like, I need time to dedicate to filming this properly so I don't miss anything out because I read 17 books in October. Before we get too carried away with how well I actually did though, it'll become obvious that some of them weren't the longest of reads, which is what helped me get to such a, for me, incredibly high number. So I'm just going to jump straight into the books. These aren't in specifically reading order because there are a lot of series involved, but I've done them in reading order by series, if that makes sense. So the first book I finished in October was, of course, The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. This is one of my favourite books of all time. It remains one of my favourite books of all time. So I did do a reading vlog of my experience rereading this and also the Testaments. So if you want to check that out, I will link that in the cards. But yeah, 5 out of 5 stars, a phenomenal book. One of my all-time favourites, probably forever at this point. I just can't get enough of it. And if you've never read The Handmaid's Tale, it's such an amazing adult dystopian. I highly recommend it. So as I mentioned, I did feature this in that reading vlog as well, and I did finish this in the month of October too. This is the sequel which actually came out over 30 years after the original book. The Handmaid's Tale came out the same year I was born. This came out this year, and this one is completely different in pace. It's so much more kind of YA feeling. It reads a lot faster. I didn't like this any less than The Handmaid's Tale. I couldn't pick a favourite between them. I doubt I ever will, but I love it equally. And so this is also one of my favourite all-time books now too. So obviously I also gave this 5 stars. From there, I realised that my Kindle Unlimited subscription was close to running out. So I wanted to hammer all the graphic novels and comics that I'd been meaning to pick up for ages and just hadn't got round to. That was more than I realised, so bear with me for all these books that I also managed to work through via Kindle Unlimited in October. The first one I finished was Lucifer Volume 1, Cold Heaven, and this is by Holly Black. I thought, I love Lucifer. I really enjoyed the TV show. I also thought, ooh, I really like Holly Black's writing. This should be a match made in heaven. I didn't like this much at all. I think it was the artwork that helped get me through reading the rest of it, to be honest. It wasn't my cup of tea. I gave it 2 stars. I just really didn't enjoy my experience overall. I mean, it has got an average rating of 3.67 on Goodreads, which isn't the highest, but all the same, I was hopeful, and yeah, my hopes were a little bit dashed on that one. Okay, idiot moment. I can't see, because I've got a new phone recently and I film on my phone. I can't see where the camera is with it facing forward facing. And I've been thinking it was that side the entire time, and I've just noticed it's this side. So sorry I've not been looking at you for this entire video. In fact, I've been looking further away than if I'd just looked at myself. There's me looking at myself, there's me looking at the camera. So yeah, sorry about that. That will improve for the rest of this video. Just thought I'd throw that in there. It's very difficult to see on this new phone. I've got the iPhone 11, in case you're wondering, in purple. So after that, I did read a series that I had been wanting to check out for so long. And I am incredibly glad that I did check this out because it's really helping with my whole Stephen King kind of obsession. It's not a Stephen King book though. This is his son. So this is Lock and Key Volume 1, Welcome to Lovecraft by Joe Hill. I was so excited to finally get around to checking this out. It's been on my want to read for such a long time. I gave this 5 stars. The story to this is a little bit weird and I don't know how far I can go without spoiling it. So you follow a family where the father dies and the family move to his old, I think it's his old childhood home. And it's quite a creepy mansion. There's some weird things going on there that involve ghosts and keys. Is probably the most I can say about this series, to be honest, but it's just adorable. I didn't just read volume 1 in October. I also read volume 2, which is Head Games. I didn't like this one quite as much as the first volume, so I gave this one 4 stars. But all the same, I really enjoyed getting to know the family more, getting him more involved in the storyline, full stop. And I love these characters so much. So I then picked up volume 3, which is Crown of Shadows, which I also gave 4 stars. Again, it just wasn't as good as the first volume for me, but all the same, I really enjoyed this. And then I also, because I was so obsessed with getting to know them all even more was leaving me left wanting more. So I then picked up volume 4, which is Keys to the Kingdom. And I also gave that one 4 stars. Again, none of them quite managed to hit the love that I reached for volume 1, but solid series. I can't wait to finish it at some point in the future, but that was as far as I got in October. I then moved on to the Lumberjanes series, because this is a series that I had started last year when I got Kindle Unlimited, and I read the first 2, I think, or did I read the first one then read volume 2 earlier this year? Either way, I needed to pick up from volume 3 at this point, which I did, so that was a terrible plan. And this is probably one of the ones that I've enjoyed the most so far, actually. I love the friendship dynamics in this. I loved the storyline and the actual plot of this one so much more than the others. I think at this point as well, my love for the characters is starting to pull me even deeper into the narrative itself. And so yeah, 5 stars for this one. I then moved on to volume 4, and I also gave this one 5 stars. Like I said, I'm at the point where I'm just so in love with all the characters and the friendships, and just feel like part of the crew at this point that I'm just in love. So I also gave this one 5 stars. I also read volume 5 last month, which, for the same reasons as the previous 2, I also gave 5 stars. The story for this one was just extra gripping for me though. You can see by the cover that it does go kind of into the whole kind of mermaid aspect, and I really enjoyed that. For audiobooks, I listened to The Secret Barrister by The Secret Barrister, and I enjoyed this audiobook. It's a non-fiction about various different cases that the barrister has been involved in or that they know about, but I had a few issues in that it was quite slow at times. Even with the audiobook, I had to really force myself occasionally. I didn't find it as humorous as other people did, and overall I just thought it was just okay, so I gave it 3 stars. Then, because I'd used a random number generator to help me kind of pick my TBR for October, I ended up reading Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller. This was a play that I loved when I was at university. I can't remember whether I gave it 4 or 5 stars back then. This time around, I found it a bit slower. I couldn't remember the story as well as I thought I did, and I found it a bit irritating in places. I don't know, maybe I wasn't quite in the mood for it when I did finally pick it up, but all the same, it was a quick read and I did enjoy it overall, and I gave it 4 stars. I also tried to read a NetGalley book in October, and that was The Wayward Girls by Amanda Mason. This is a thriller horror kind of novel that should be everything I love. There should be everything I love in a story, and I don't get why I didn't like this. So it's got 2 timelines, 1976 and now. And I don't know, I just didn't feel the appeal. The 1976 bit wasn't spooky, it wasn't horrifying as far as I got at least. And meanwhile, the now, the only part I was really interested in was the mum's point of view, but that didn't pop up often enough for me, and it was all just a bit meh. And in the end, I realised that I was finding it a chore to pick up, so I stopped picking it up and gave up. So yeah, sadly I gave that one 1 star. I wanted to get in the mood for Halloween in October, so I did start picking up some old childhood books as well. This is the first Fear Street book. I've lost the front of the cover. But this is Hide and Shriek by R.L. Stine. It's another series that he did kind of alongside his Goosebumps series. So this is The Ghosts of Fear Street. The first book, Hide and Shriek, covers this family have recently moved to an area, and there's this girl that kind of fits in with everyone else at school quite well, but she struggles to kind of get how serious or not they're being about a game of hide and seek that takes place in the woods involving a ghost. That's all I'm going to cover in the synopsis, I think. But yeah, I really enjoyed the storyline of this, but reading about a 12-year-old at this point was quite a struggle in my life. Reading it as an adult wasn't the easiest, but I enjoyed it overall, so I gave it 3 stars. Ironically, as a child, I would have given the previous book, say, 5 stars. And then this book, which is the second in the series, Who's Been Sleeping in My Grave, I didn't like as much back in those days. This time around, from rereading this, I enjoyed this a lot more than the previous one, so I actually gave this one 4 stars. This one, there's a new teacher in town because the kid's normal teacher is suddenly off sick for some unbeknown reason, and one of the kids thinks that this supply teacher is a ghost and indeed follows them to where they live. It's quite creepy and disturbing, lots more kind of terrifying, horrific themes in this one than the previous one, and felt a lot more mature in that sense. The actual characters, again, did feel their age, which is a good thing, but wasn't a good thing as a reader at my age, so that's why I couldn't give it 5 stars. I'm not the intended market at the end of the day. This was a fabulous book. I was on a roll at this point, so I picked up Welcome to Dead House, also by R.L. Stine. This is the first book, or at least the first book in my collection of the Goosebumps books, and there's so much nostalgia in Goosebumps for me, and I've never reread them as an adult. I'm possibly learning why. Again, the same with the Fear Street. It's very based upon such childish themes within the actual people themselves, the characters themselves, yet the storyline is quite creepy. It is quite kind of suspenseful, and there's full of tension and genuinely a little bit scary, I think, especially for the age that this is kind of focused for. So yeah, I gave this 4 stars as well. And the final book that I read in October is Say Cheese and Die, which is another Goosebumps book by R.L. Stine. This one is number 2 in my collection. This one follows some friends who break into a house, steal, well, like more like a haunted mansion. It's not like they've broken in somewhere where people live. It's more like a haunted mansion, and they steal this camera, and they learn very quickly that all is not as it seems with this camera. I never used to like this one as much when I was younger. I definitely preferred Welcome to Dead House as a child. But yeah, I quite enjoyed this. It didn't have as much of the immature issues, even within the friendships, that I kind of felt with the previous books I've mentioned. So this one felt a lot more kind of grown up overall. But instead, the whole idea of the camera, it kind of had to suspend your disbelief a bit with it. And I just didn't find it overly scary. All the same though, solid book in the series. And that is everything that I read in October. I'm sorry if I've rushed through any of these a little bit, but I've got separate reading vlogs coming up for quite a few of these, and I just don't want to go into them more than I need to. I don't know when you'll get those reading vlogs though, because I've already been working on some of them for quite some time. But thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe by clicking the image of me if you want to see more book reviews and other bookish content from me, and I will see you soon. Bye bye!